Grace, I'm extremely happy to have you on our first podcast of 2024.
Well, it's a pleasure to have me. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It was well. First of all, it's a pleasure, and I'm very happy to introduce you to our audience and our audience to you. I do hope it's going to be beneficial to both you and the audience. And you are a very unique person. You're a very unique talent that I know, and I've known since probably 2019, virtually. But now we finally met in Burbank, and uh, it was fun in all possible ways. And I guess that after everything we've been through, I could call you a friend.
We're mates now. That's what we call
uh,
it in the UK.
yeah. Right. So, how is the weather in England? Let's begin with something simple.
Well, the weather is surprisingly, not surprisingly, it's either gloomy or sunny. So today we got snowy. So that's like a change for 2024. We've got our first snowfall of the year. Pretty excited about that today. So I'm really enjoying it.
Really?
Hmm.
Okay. Well, we got some snow in Lake Tahoe. So, if you love snow, you're welcome to visit.
Is that a good place to ski?
I have no idea. I've never been. But if we check the video which I sent you, it probably is a good place to ski right now.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
let's dive into your little long story.
Let's see.
You you come from Indonesia,
Yeah.
and why did you decide to dive into acting? It's not the easiest. Nothing is easy, obviously, but it's not the easiest business to develop in. And what was your drive, inspiration, and what was the spark that made you make this decision?
For me, I've always, I guess, growing up as an Asian kid, this is not very common. As you know, like most Asian kids would either be pushed towards being a doctor or a business person or an engineer. That's probably the only career point that we have as Asian kids. Um, but I grew up with very hardworking parents. And when I mean hardworking, they were always working. So they were not home. And in those moments after school, I would spend my time singing karaoke to Britney Spears alone. Um, Very embarrassing to sort of admit now, but that's sort of the spark of the start. It all came from passion. Um, but my motivation and what drives me was specified when I was in acting college, because I believe that in order to be in such a tough business that requires a lot of faith, you've got to have more motivation than just a reason of being famous or being rich. Because to be honest, you can be rich easier being a doctor or an engineer. That's a fact. But um, for me, I sort of see it as being an emotional doctor. So I think that in a society where everyone is just forced to stuff in their feelings and just, numb things, I think whenever they watch a movie or a theater, they're sort of given an opportunity to sort of feel and be understood, in a context that's entertaining as well. So I feel like that's our role as an actor, that we get to usher in that healing and I guess the story that people carry that they've been stuffing in for a long time and feel understood. So that's my motivation.
Motivation is a good thing. What is the drive which keeps you disciplined? Because motivation is like a spark, but then motivation might fade away. But if you have discipline, you keep moving.
This is very true. I think mainly for me, the first thing would be God, because obviously everything that I've been doing is an obedience towards God as well. And the reason why I'm in the industry is because God has always told me to empower other actors. So that's the driving force, firstly. In terms of discipline, I think we are creatures of habit. Um, I personally have broken down my visions and goals, not just like a 5-year plan, but things that I can action in terms of not overwhelming myself and make it actionable. So that's what makes it realistic for me. I see this as a business instead of just like a craft or like an arts or something entertaining. So when I break it into pieces for me, I've got little goals within what do I achieve for in my admin as an actor? or my finance as an actor, or marketing as an actor, right? Like how many publications do I put out every year or every month? That's something that I work towards, those little goals. In terms of my craft as an actor, I've got my own set of disciplines. I believe consistency is key. So if you exercise like you enter into 2024 with like a workout routine, you want to like, get that summer body, and then you overwhelm yourself after like 3 weeks. Normally the statistics, like people drop out of like their routines because they're like, oh, it's too hard. They have excuses and everything else. But for me, if you put little things into consistency, it makes it easier and you see the fruits of it more. So I trust the process that if I keep doing this, I'll become a better actor and my career will grow, because it's impossible to not grow if you keep doing these things.
Which things? I think that's pretty interesting. That will be very interesting and efficient for the other actresses to learn. Which
Yeah.
little things do you put there every day?
So for me, oh gosh, there's so much things. But if I have to sort of pick and choose every week the things that I need to do, movement, like some sort of exercise, whether it be 15 minutes or 10 minutes, like it just needs to be there every day. Whether you do yoga, Pilates, even if you can't go to the gym, there's no excuse to not move your body, because this is your instrument. You have to, the healthier you are, the better actor you are. That's the truth. Voice and speech. I do this 20-minute, there's a YouTube video and it's so simple. Like there's a YouTube video for voice and speech for actors that's free. Like there's no reason to not practice your voice. In terms of script reading, if you don't read a book every day, read a script. Like this is just simple things that you have to do as an actor, I believe, to keep your muscles fresh, and self-tape every week to make sure that when you get an audition, this is not a trial run. This is not a practice. This is you showing the best work that you've got, that you've been training for. And I think many actors make that mistake of practicing when they get the self-tape or an audition. And no wonder when you show your best work, it's not there, right? Like you just got to keep getting better at that. So these are the 3 things at least that I do as an actor every day.
How does it help you feel and move towards the goal, which is obtaining the role? And to clarify the question, one thing is when you get a part, or you get sides. One thing is your own vision of the character, of what's happening. The other thing is if you attend an acting school or you have an acting coach, that the coach or the teacher would tell you. And the other thing is what director is envisioning, or the writer or the showrunner. How do you navigate among these visions to get the actual thing what they want to see?
I think in an audition, the trap is to people please. What I mean is there's probably hundreds of auditioners that is getting the same exact script, and they will probably interpret it the same exact way, because they're thinking in their mind that, oh, this is how it's supposed to be played with. The director and producer probably has a vision for it and it looks like this. And that's probably the first obvious choice. What other people might not get into is being brave enough to not give a damn about what people think about themselves and the character, and just be themselves in that character. I think Meryl Streep said this amazing quote that acting is not being someone different, it's bringing yourself into every character. So what will make it unique? What is your selling point? You talk about my selling point. My selling point is always going to be that earnest do-gooder, sweet girl next door, sassy go-getter. So how do I bring that into the context and the situation of this character? That is what I always try to bring, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, but what if the director or the showrunner or the writer or the executive producer is looking for something else?
Then they will adjust it. They will adjust it. And obviously it's a collaboration, right? Like the first audition will always be something that you propose. It's like a business proposal. This is what I can offer to the character. And then the director gives feedback. Oh, could you try playing it like this? Then try playing it like that, exactly as the director wants, because we probably as actors, we only know a portion of what they're thinking. So, I think what's important is to always be yourself genuinely, firstly. And if they want to adjust it, go with that.
That is true, but it's an ideal situation. You know, if um, if talents are getting auditions, right? They might have some sort of little description of the character. They might not have anything at all, just the size, and they usually won't get any feedback at all.
Hmm.
What you're describing is a great ideal situation when you're sending something and you're getting a feedback, which I would do with talent, but I would say the majority they don't. So how do you navigate in these situations when you're not getting any feedback? And it's a good thing that you mentioned it's like a business proposal, but in business we prep this proposal based on some information that they want. In auditions, we have no idea what they want.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um,
how do you navigate in these situations?
yeah. Interesting question. Um, I would always work with what you have because, like I said, just being true to who you are and stuff, and being in the context of the character. Um, it's just really important to do that because I feel like everyone else will produce the same exact self take as like what your first conceived notion of the character is. You as an actor, you're paid to make choices, strong choices. And what I mean choices is the more definite that you are. For example, if there's lots of times like I don't have like a character description for like a script, like that's very common. Like you won't be getting like unless it's like a really big like TV series or whatever it is. They don't really break it down. You don't get the whole script. You don't know what comes before. You don't know what comes after that. You probably only get like 2 pages, and that's it. But it's your job as an actor to create the circumstances, to create choices and make them and propose those choices to the producers and directors. And if they like it, they like it. That's what you're offering as a business. That's your brand. So that's where I would start. Just being genuine with yourself and your first instinct in the story and how you can define it through asking. My preparation is through asking lots of questions. It's like being a detective when I study a script. So I'll ask like questions that other people won't be asking about the character. For example, like I'll be asking, like myself, is the character the type of person who would eat ice cream or not? Like you wouldn't ask these questions like in like a crime scene sort of like scene, for example. But I ask this because the more that I define my character and define it as a real person instead of just a person on the script, it makes it more human. It makes it more clear, and these choices are obvious for me. And that's what I mean by I think just being genuine with yourself and your character, and starting from there, and making those definite choices.
That's very interesting. I'll get back to this topic a little later. When I was hosting my master classes and we've been talking about these auditions and stuff like that, I mentioned to the attendees that why don't you start with building some sort of relationships with the people who are sending you these auditions? And yeah, if it's a big studio or it's a TV series, which is a big name already, that's one thing. But you could connect with people, let's say like myself, or more accomplished, less accomplished, even on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and they would respond because like I know I respond. Obviously, maybe not 100%, but at least someone would. And by asking them, what is that are you looking for in this role? Um, or trying other ways to get more information will help you better to a submit this proposal, this business proposal, b build a relationship, because even if you don't qualify for this role, they will remember you for the next one, and they will remember you because you care. That's how you make people feel. um, what do you think about this idea, and do you use these tricks?
Definitely, I contact. So I have an agent, but I don't let my agent do my work because they don't care. Let's face facts. Like they just care about making money, right? But my job is to network. So for me, networking is really important. And you're right, you use like LinkedIn. Like I go through IMDb and I have like an IMDb Pro to sort of get like the behind the scenes emails, because sometimes it's like, there's lots of directors who don't put their emails, and rightly so, like in the public, but through IMDb Pro you can get them, or LinkedIn. And I just introduce myself, pitch myself through emails or LinkedIn, and I go through that every week. Like there's a list that I have to go through. It's like a email hit list. In terms of when it comes to auditions, it's not always accessible. And this is if it's like bigger directors, right? Like it's for directors that are like TV series, like, like the A-listers and everything else. Like it's not always possible, and they don't really have time to sort of reply. But I do agree in building networking. So after a self-tape, I will personally, whether it's a big director or not, I will personally send the production office a thank you letter, like an email. Thank you so much for the opportunity to let me share my part in pitching this character. And that sort of continues the flow of it. In terms of understanding the character, the casting director mostly is the only one that is accessible realistically to an actor, if there are some big shots or the producer. So I would start there. And you're right, like casting directors do remember you more because of that, and they're sort of on the forefront of your mind if you do that. Because I've had auditions where I had to clarify a few things about the character, or I've had to clarify about the direction of the director and their vision of the story. And I booked jobs because of that, because I've had to clarify things. So yeah, I've had to do that, but not in every case, I would say.
So it's still a good idea.
It's still a good idea. Yeah. Like, I mean, if it works, it works. But it depends on the market. Meaning I've worked in the UK market as an actor. I've worked in the Australian market as an actor, and I've worked in the US market as an actor. Now the US are very open in terms of receiving emails and everything else, like networking and stuff. It's very, very open. But when you come to the UK and Australia, they're not very open to that. They sort of see it as, I guess, for lack of better words, just trying to be a teacher's pet sort of thing, which is really weird because, I mean, how else are you going to stand out? Like in America, we know it's all about networking, that's business. But in the market in the UK and Australia, it just doesn't work for some reason. I've tried for some reason.
That's a very interesting thing. So what does work in the UK and in Australia?
Excellence. And it's very cheesy to say this. Very, very cheesy to say this. But the UK and Australian actors are very classically trained actors, meaning that they can tell when you're BSing in your acting and you're not. And a testament to this is the first month that I've moved to the UK, I booked two jobs. One from a professional casting director, one from just like a independent film. But that's just because of the work. And in some place like LA, you realistically need like 5 years to probably have like an acting career in LA, because you need to get into the foot of the door of like casting directors or producers or whatever it is with networking. But in the UK and Australia, it's all about method, like classically trained acting. If your talent shines, you'll book the work. As easy as that. And it sucks because you work so hard in networking and business and stuff, like with Australia and like UK, but it somehow doesn't work. So yeah, I think it is all about like being the best that you can be among others, which is really hard.
So which of the markets do you personally like better?
I personally, this is me being really biased, because I personally feel like the US is the best market for me. And it's just, I think it's just based on personality choices, because I feel like the US are very open-minded, and they welcome new talents. Whereas Australia, for example, they have their own clique of actors, and no one else enters. And the horrible thing is there's not a lot of work, but there's a lot of actors as well. There's a huge pool of that. So personally, I like the US because people are always open to network and collaborate and create. But outside of that, it's not really like an open market, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we have a market which is completely open. It's always a little bit of struggle to get into it, but when you get
You
into
have
it,
to knock. Yeah, you have to knock really hard. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing about that. I believe the US is also the best market, plus it's the biggest market in the world. Now, let's dive back to one of the things that you mentioned about how you prep for your auditions, how you um, break down your character, your role. What is your path and which methods do you use?
So I am Meisner trained. Um, but I do a mixture of Uta and Meisner. So it's always based on truth. Firstly, I start with asking myself, how do I relate to this character? I find the common grounds first in reading it. So, firstly, the trap of the actor is to memorize the script, the first thing that they do. So they receive a script and they start memorizing every line, their parts only. But for me, I try to stay away from that trap. I want to make sure that I'm reading the story first, and then I'll work into my characters. So the next step for me after reading the script, I would obviously break down the motivation of the character in that scene, and then I would break it down to tinier motives. So every um, every line that I have, I break it into punctuations. This is going to be very technical for a lot of listeners, but for every comma, every exclamation point, every question mark, that is 1 point for me. And I mark it with a motivation, like a sub motivation. What am I trying to do? What's my action in this, like, subtext, I guess? And I break it down to that detail for every exclamation that I make and every punctuation. And after breaking down the actions, I start diving into the character a bit more. So I actually have my own table, like in my document in my computer, and I have about 20 questions to ask myself and to fill in. It's like typing an essay. I love, like, I'm a nerd, like I love typing. Um, so it's questions about, like, what's my background, what's my personal history, me being the character, what's my socioeconomic background, what was happening in the scene, what was the past, and all these things. It takes about at least 20 questions to specify not only the scene, the situation, but also making the character into human instead of just a person on the script. And that is the gist of my process. And then I never, this is a golden rule for me, I never memorize a script on my own. Meaning, I don't want to make choices in my mind by memorizing it, just practicing on my own, because that's a trap. So every time I memorize, learn a script, I do it by repetition, by reading it with another actor friend or someone who I can trust, to just repeat, repeat, repeat. And through those readings, I discover new discoveries just based off what other people is reading off to me and stuff. And then it goes deeper and deeper. It depends, obviously, how much time I have with the script. But that is just a standard that I have in my process in terms of breaking down a script for me.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work. Yeah.
It does remind me of Stanislavski method actually. So I don't know how much of a Meisner actress you are, but that's more of a Stanislavski work and pretty in-depth research. You mentioned in the beginning of our podcast episode that to you, acting and being an actress is some sort of psychological work. And I've noticed that also with a lot of people who I work with, and especially the kids, what they did with their characters, with these deep analysis, they also helped themselves to figure out some issues within themselves. Have you experienced something like that? And if you did, what was that?
um,
I know the answer is yes, so please share with us.
there has been lots of cases. Gosh, trying to find the right one.
It's
Um,
okay. You could do the wrong one. The juicier, the
uh,
juicier, the better. Yeah.
can I use the recent project that we did in
Oh yeah,
Burbank?
of course. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you mean the scene in the bank?
that is our inner secret behind the scenes, Victor.
Very true.
That is the reason why I will never go back to that bank branch anymore. But anyway, so Fatima and this beautiful healer pilot that I got the chance to be in, um, it's a bit of a odd situation because the more I studied the character, the more I find myself in it. Meaning that she has always been a people pleaser from my point of view, because she has been striving for that acceptance and striving for. I mean, her parents basically abandoned her because she dropped out of college, and I guess that just shows like what kind of parent abandons someone because of someone dropping out of college. But that happens, right, in the classical world of Asians, especially. Um, I came from that background. Um, I came from not feeling ever good enough with everything that I do. Um, and I think Fatima also expressed a lot of jealousy in terms of where she wanted to be, like being Dr. Chris's apprentice, but she doesn't have the qualifications, nor the talent, nor education to sort of qualify for that. And I've been in that place. Um, but I think Fatima was speaking to me that, like sometimes just speaking out what you want and being brave enough to not only speak it out, but also ask for it is the first step. And everyone else is waiting for you to be ready. And it sort of speaks to me in my acting as well, because, hey, like, to be honest, all of these roles, all of maybe my Emmy Award, God willing, like, it's just waiting for me. But I have to be ready to be bold enough and to be brave enough to um, show myself firstly, and not anyone else, show myself firstly that I want it that bad, that I don't really care about anyone else's opinions, that it has to work and no excuses, it just has to work. So that sort of spoke to me, I guess, from Fatima's side, that um, you know, to not continually, and maybe other people who's working in the office who may not enjoy it, to not live under that slavery of the 9 to 5 of dreading to go back to work and waiting for your dreams to come true and everything else. Just do it, basically. So that's what I've learned, and she sort of spoke to me. Yeah. Interesting enough.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned, because when I was writing this character, I thought of you, and obviously I had no idea, and I don't know much about your life, your story. But what um, I used your pictures on Instagram, and I was just scrolling and trying to get a feeling of what it could be that you've experienced. Maybe, obviously, it's a guess. It's maybe yes, maybe no, um, and all of these little characteristics which you mentioned, they came up to me via feeling when I was scrolling your profile.
That's
And
amazing.
what I've noticed is, yeah, you have a smile, but your eyes, they don't smile often as your face does.
Yeah.
So a lot of these little details, they gave me some ideas, maybe inspiration as well. But besides, I wanted to show a real different side of the story with Fatima, which is the opposite from what is shown in, let's say, Crazy Rich Asians or Fresh Off the Boat, which to me is over exaggerated, fake, and just one little niche instead of the big picture and the details which actually matter. Have you watched the film, by the way, Crazy Rich Asians?
Yes, I have.
What is
Yeah.
your perspective, being an Asian from a
It's,
working class family?
I don't know, like I kind of feel like
And
shows
you,
like
you
this
can be honest.
tend to skew Asians in a stereotypical way.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes in not the best light, I would say. But yeah, I feel like it's either I don't know. I feel like it was pretty stereotypical in my opinion of how they portrayed Asians to sort of be, I guess.
Well, we could play with stereotypes in different ways. We could have a dim sum, a breakfast with chicken feet. That's one stereotypical thing, and have showing the family together, having a bunch of kids, and that traditional stereotypical good thing, which I've learned a lot from,
Yeah.
or this exaggerated, over exaggerated, and I would say even like perverted in a way, image of in Chinese they say "fu or die," the second generation rich kids, right? Um, what is your perspective on showing these different worlds of the Asian people, Asian communities? And if you were the one who would make something like a story like that, what would you focus on?
I would firstly, to address your first points, there are, like, I personally, because coming from Singapore as well, like half of me, um, crazy rich Asians is true. Like there is like a population just for like, rich Asians in Singapore especially. And they do party really hard and stuff. Um, the drama, whether it's real or not, it's over exaggerated in my opinion. Um, but I think if I were to, props to the producers and everything else, it was really entertaining. But I think entertainment aside, I think the little nuances that I would want to bring into the film, like what you say, like what we actually experience as an Asian family, like, eating chicken feet for breakfast, like porridge, noodles, and all these things. These are the uniqueness that is missed out. And I feel like I did really well at the box office and stuff, but I feel like it was the choices were made to please people and make it into an entertainment instead of making it into something that is of truth, I guess, genuineness, of what we Asian families actually go through in our day-to-day lives.
That's very interesting. Well, I'm asking because I'm writing a feature film, and it's based off a clash of cultures in one family, and the biggest part of it is also based on Asian/Chinese culture.
Sure.
Um, Mainly because I'm not really well educated in Korean or Japanese or any
Yeah.
other. Um, but the Chinese communities, we have them all around the world. You mentioned Singapore, um, Indonesia, Malaysia. They all have Chinese communities. They want to have in California.
Yes.
So it's a pretty vastly expanded culture. And what I've noticed that they experience, especially when they go through breakups or through divorces, and how their kids are, witnessing and going through all of these situations, it gave me a lot of thoughts. And later on, I met with a very interesting Korean writer, and she
Hmm.
mentioned to me that they have a lot of issues in Korea because of the war, because of the anger issues, especially among men. So it's like, okay, well, that's another interesting thing. So I'm really excited about what I'm writing about, and I would love if you join, because you definitely have some um, firsthand deep experience in that.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
yeah, let's move back to something more entertaining. You mentioned that you were in Shang-Chi,
Yes.
and let's talk about that. Your experience. How did you get the role? How many lines do you have? Um, and your experience overall.
It's just a one liner, to be honest. I was hired as a stunt person, specialist performer. They would categorize me in because they hired me specifically for my archery skills. So at that time, it was really weird because at that time it was during COVID, and supposedly everything else in the world was locked down. There was no productions going on and everything else. But Marvel had already moved their production, and Destin Daniel, the director, had already moved to Australia, and so they had to continue producing that. So we took like a pause for like about a month or so because Destin, he got COVID, unfortunately. And then we continued production with that. It took about 3 months of shooting, 12-hour days, Monday to Friday. Enjoyed it a lot. Got to work with Andy Chung. He's a legend from the Jackie Chan stand team. He's choreographed a lot of action films. And when I got hired for this, it's very it it didn't come from the most conventional ways. It wasn't from my agent. It was because of my own networking. In fact, a lot of my projects were from my own networking. Funny enough, they were casting on Facebook, and I joined a lot of Facebook groups for actors and stuff. And they were specifically looking for archer people, and so they casted me and three other people to be the main archers for this group. We had to go through training, and Disney and Marvel has the production budget to blow, so they paid us for COVID days, they paid us for training days. We had to be trained in the Chinese Eastern way of doing archery,
Right.
obviously. But most days, those 3 months, we had to choreograph our own stunts, our own fight sequence. So I got to work next to Aquafina, which is a privilege as well. She is funny. And
Is she?
yeah, well, I mean, she's
Yeah,
not the
that's
most.
what I'm saying. Well,
Yeah,
I know.
I mean,
Um,
she's not the most polite. Let's just say that she's not the most polite sort of person. But that's her style of comedy, I guess. Like she would, I guess, in the middle of the set, like ask like a few Cantonese guys from background or something, though she would be like, hey, what's the curse word for this in Cantonese? And like, people like her, maybe like her group enjoys that kind of crass comedy, but to each their own, right? um, so I got to work with them and Simu Liu as well in that period. I got to meet Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh, which is legends. I think Tony Leung for me, I guess growing up as a Asian kid, like pretty cool.
well,
Um,
he's great. I to my personal opinion, what I think is which I think is correct. And I'm not really modest, as you've noticed.
yeah.
If we didn't have Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh in that film, obviously, and yourself, and I can't remember the name of the actress who was playing Tony Leung's wife. So if we didn't have that Hong Kongese old school powerful team, this film is just junk.
Yeah. And no, I completely agree with that, because I think it required that those legends to sort of stand up to, I guess, retelling a story of ancient China, which I mean, not to butcher it, I guess, like they didn't really portray it in a proper traditional way, obviously, but I think it needed these legends to sort of make the credibility of the film. Otherwise, it wouldn't. You're right, like it wouldn't stand, I guess, and it wouldn't be a hit in the box office.
Well, I'm not sure about the hidden box office, but if you were, that's another thing which I want to ask, because I know you've been in this film. If you were the director, or let's say you are the executive producer, would you still choose Simu Liu and Aqua whatever Ina for these main roles, or you would choose someone else?
um I get why they chose Aquafina, because she's already got that star power in terms of bringing that comedic relief to such a heavy plot of Chinese drama tradition and
Uh-huh.
action, and where there's, I guess, for me seeing it, whether it's Aquafina or not, it needed that comedic relief in the story to just make it a Disney movie and their brand. Um, so whether it's Aquafina or not, um,
But would you choose her, or I don't know, David Chappelle?
I wouldn't go with David Chappelle.
There you
Um,
go.
but I wouldn't go with David Chappelle. But I would go with someone who is Asian who is funny. That's it. Um,
There is a stand-up comedian. He was just hosting Emmys or something like that. I can't remember his Joe Coy.
oh yeah,
I think he
yeah,
would be fantastic.
he would be fantastic. And if only he was discovered before before his hit Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was what he was known for, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So before that, I think he has spent years of, trying to breaking through, I guess, the industry. But if only he was discovered, I feel like he would have been perfect for, like, yeah, this film. And I feel like that he brings such a humility to his acting as well that I really appreciate. But um no, I feel like I would choose him over, obviously, Aquafina, because I think the humility shines through, and it's just easy to work with humble people. But I mean, Aquafina was, I guess, the choice of the producers because I guess she has that star power already. If I'm guessing.
Well, I trust you on that because I had no idea who she was until I watched the film, and then it took me a while to remember the name. What about the main guy?
Oh, Simu.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Honestly, let's be blunt and honest. It's an honest podcast. We don't need to be diplomatic.
I wouldn't.
There you
I
go.
wouldn't.
Hmm.
Um, Especially at that point where this was his breakthrough role. Like, I mean, he had Kim's Convenience before this. Um, but this was his breakthrough role. Um, and I guess if he wasn't discovered, I would have gone with someone else. Gosh, I forgot his name, but he came from Melbourne, Australia, and he became a very famous Asian American actor. Um, Gosh, his name escapes me.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
but
We have other
yeah,
names too.
yeah, but yeah, I have other sort of people in mind, if that makes sense.
Which candidates do you think of?
That guy, it's his name starts with Tony, but like I can't put a finger to it.
Okay, who else?
Yeah. Um, Someone definitely with a martial arts background. I would actually hire someone from someone who has a martial arts background. Um, I don't think Simu had a very strong martial arts background.
Yeah.
But personally, if we were to do a Marvel show based on, you know, oh, there's this Indonesian actor in Mortal Kombat. Um,
Oh, come on.
you
Yeah,
know
I
what
know
I
who you're
mean?
talking. Yep, I do. He played Kung Lao.
Yes, that one. Yes.
Are you are you joking?
I w- that would be for me a more substantial choice. I think for me,
What about Kang
because
Lee? Do you want a martial artist or you want a real fighter, a real strong man
if he
fighter?
was Kang Lee would be amazing in skills. Definitely, he's a great person. All in all, as well, great actor as well, and great martial artist definitely. Um, but I think for the age group that they were looking for in terms of like fitting like the young professional, it has to fit that sort of age range.
No, yeah, I mean
Because
age
yeah,
aside.
yeah. I mean, if he was younger, then obviously like that's not a question and stuff. Right, yeah. But it has to be as well someone who fits the character and age description as well.
Among, let's dive a little bit into something that doesn't make sense. Um, if you'd mix up an A-list actor or actress into this film to make it just something unique, who would you use? Who would you invite?
Jackie Chan.
Not an Asian.
Not an Asian. You
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
like
To
an
make
A-lister who's
something
not an
that doesn't
Asian.
make any sense into the story.
Um, they did have someone though. Benjamin. Um, sorry, Kingsley. Um, he that didn't make sense for me.
Mhm.
But someone maybe. Oh, not an Asian. That would be hard. Like Tom Cruise or something. Like if you just want to talk about like piking up like action films and like box office rates and everything else, put Tom Cruise in there. Like that's always gonna like sell like in terms of like the kind of films that it's gonna be.
Well,
And
we could bring in Jack Sparrow,
mm,
and that would have been something really interesting if he was, when you were the archer in that
yeah,
scene, and then he's running from some crazy people.
Yeah.
Or this Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci with some betting. I mean, something like that
Robert De
would just
Niro is
make sense.
funny. He's
But
hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um. Yeah. Hugh Jackman. Like,
yeah, not a
yeah,
bad idea. You could do better, but yeah.
he's he amongst everyone that I've talked with a lot of crews and everything else, they always said that he's the nicest person that they've ever worked with. That's always been a testament to his character. Every person that I've spoken to on set that has worked with him, obviously. So yeah, I would choose someone who is easy to work with, but also brings that star power. Someone like Hugh Jackman um,
Or
would
Brad
be
Pitt.
my choice. Yeah, yeah.
Who doesn't like Brad Pitt? Um, After you return back to Europe, what are your plans in terms of nearest future markets, further developing your amazing career?
Yeah. So my main goal is always my main goal would always be an Emmy award. Um, but in terms of this year, I've been blessed enough to have two things coming up, lining up. I'm shooting something starting next month, early next month. We're shooting for Netflix Nigeria. We're shooting a sci-fi romance film, and that's going to be taking part for about 2 months. I believe that's going to be very helpful to gain an audience in Nigeria itself, to have a fan base there, because I think that's where I'm lacking in terms of building a fan base. So I'm going to start there. Um, After that, I have another feature film project from Carl Jackson Studios. He's a US studios, a bit like Tyler Perry, if you can imagine. And we're shooting in Aspen, Colorado in spring. So I am trying my very best, as you know, Victor, to lock in that US visa O1, because as I have mentioned before in the beginning of this interview, that I really think that that is the most beneficial market for me, personally. So that is the plan so far in this year. And yeah, continually just working on the publications for those two things, and PR stuffs. So yeah, that's the
That's a good thing that you
immediate plans.
mentioned. What is your perspective on PR in terms of its importance and necessity, or not importance, for the actors and actresses, for the talent?
How will people know about you? There's so much actors who are brilliant, they're talented, but the ones who are working are the ones that are publicizing themselves and marketing themselves right. So talent aside, I that's important, right? You can't get jobs if you're not excellent at your work. Like, you have to be good. But I do believe that the ones that are making a lot of money are not necessarily the ones that are the most talented in the world. They are the ones that know how to market themselves and brand themselves and use a publicist, in terms of just continually, sharing themselves, and putting themselves out there in the community, to be known. So I think it's a very important aspect, as an actor.
Well, God bless your words. That's what I'm trying to tell all the actors around, that guys and girls, work on your personal brand, on marketing, on PR. Acting training and courses are great, but just do the math how much money you spend on acting classes, acting coaching, acting training, acting super coaching, actor super training, and then you land nothing.
Yeah, yeah. It's you want to get, even if you do get a coach, get a coach that gives you the tools to be able to do it yourself, not a coach that you have to run to every single time there's an audition. Because just be realistic, you don't really get constant flow of money already in this industry. Like, be smart about your finances and where you invest your finances into as an actor. That's what I would say.
Amazing. These words, they should be the words to inspire and lead the whole industry of 2024 in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, maybe in the whole United States of America. Well, Grace, thank you for your time. It's been always, as always, a pleasure. And I do miss those days when you were constantly trying to joke.
Shading
And
at you.
Yeah. I mean, that was really fun, you know. So we and I myself, we can't wait to see you back in Los Angeles
Oh,
and
God
back in
willing.
California. We don't have that much snow, but like Lake Tahoe, they do have. So if you miss
Fine.
snow,
They have
well,
fake snow in LA.
we have fake everything in LA.
Yeah. Let's be real.
Let's
No,
be
it's a
real.
real
Exactly.
pleasure. Thank you so much for
Exactly.
having me on your podcast.
Thank
It's
you,
been a
Grace,
privilege.
and God bless you. Say hello to your husband, and we can't wait to see you back in Los Angeles.
All right. Thanks, Victor.